Alright, so it's crank machining time. Got the crank all dialed up in the lathe. I'm about ready to machine the end of it, take the shaft. I've already done the drive gear at the end. So that's all bored out, ready to go for the shaft and press that in. Crank material machine real nice. Alright, here's a crank all finished up, pressed together. So this is the new bit of shaft, bored into the old journal there, press fit into there. Same in here, this one goes all the way through, you can see the new shaft poking out there. I'm going to give it a lash with this gear unsupported. I think that the bending moment caused by this gear is pretty minor offset to the center line of that gear there. Being this thing only makes 25 newton meters or something, I'm just going to rely on that bearing and that shaft to resist any bending around that, and we'll just see how that bearing there goes. Worst case scenario is I can press this gear back off that shaft and pull it all apart and make a new shaft and press it all back together. So yeah, there we go. About 2.4 kilos lighter, which is good, and probably the biggest part is even less than the weight itself. Is probably 80% of the weight that was removed was on the larger diameter, all the counterweights. So the initial effect of that would be, I can't remember if it was the squared or cubed function, squared function. So it'll make a huge difference to the response of the engine, which is what we're trying to achieve. So dials up really good. Crank run out according to manual is 0.03 millimeters. I'm 0.01 across the crank, so had all the numbers happy, which is pretty good going for a little hobby lathe. Yeah, see if it works. Carrying on from getting the crank machined up to go into the case with the new added drive shaft part, I decided to teardrop, as they say, the big ends and give them a polish. So this helps with a little bit of oil distribution around the big end bearing, so I'm told. So I sort of thought about it and decided it certainly can't hurt. So pretty easy to do actually. I just did it by hand with a file, this little round file. This crank material is not very hard, surprisingly, but I suppose with a oil film bearing that you don't need anything very hard. I mean, the big end bearings themselves and main bearings are soft as butter, so getting close to reassembly time. See what difference it makes. Also, another quick update that I don't think I mentioned I did was I have updated the standard head studs to these 10mm bolts. So quite substantially larger than the stock ones. Those little noodles there, if you can hear them. The camera would focus, there you go. And that was after reading about the FZR, the Turbo FZR125 land speed record guys that were pushing 30 something PSI boost, and we're having head gasket issues. So I've done that. I've also machined the outer deck of the barrels down 1 thou, which is 0.02 mil, so just over 1 thou, and that just allows for a little bit additional crush on the sleeves there to maintain sealing. So yeah, easy upgrade, just drill and tap, buy some studs or cap heads. The only thing I had to do really with them was damn thing with focus is just machine the heads down, because where they sit inside the cylinder head, they just need a little bit more clearance in there. But apart from that, real easy. Hey guys, so back on the FZR. We've had the bike back together and on track since the crank was installed. The great news is the crank's now out of the bike and it's in brilliant condition. The end of the crank here looks like there's no problems with bearing or flex or anything untoward, so I'm extremely happy to see that. I'm extremely unhappy to see that we now have a wireless conrod. Yeah, so let go in a big way. I'm pretty sure I know what reason why, but it did an absolute job on the cases. It broke the corner off this case here and put a inspection port there. So a bit of a shame, but could be worse. We've saved the head, hasn't damaged the head, and I've already got another set of cases getting prepped to go back together with it. So the theory is at the moment, I've turned the boost up a lot now. I'm at 20 psi, so I'm starting to lean on it a bit. And one of the sessions I was out on track, I had a crank trigger fault, and the ECU was clipping the crank trigger, and so I was getting some really weird misfires and pops and bangs and stuff. And I suspect what happened was on that session, when it did that a few times, I got a big either early or pre-ignition event where the cylinder pressure was just too great for the rods, and you can see the one that hasn't snapped is an S-bend. I rectified the problem with the crank trigger. It was just a filtering issue, so that was easy to fix. But I suspect the damage was done, and when I went back out on the track, unfortunately I had a little feeling that something wasn't quite right with the bike. It seemed a little bit lazier to come on under full power, but it did still make what felt like full power for about 6 laps, and then it made 0 power. So yeah, another one of those, muck around and find out. But it's still coming along really well, and that the crank, this was the big test for me, was to see if the crank would last. And after a couple of days of beating on it, it appears that it's holding up, which is cool, and 90% sure I know why it's done that, so we won't do that again. If I ever have a crank trigger issue, I'll immediately stop trying to ride the bike. And thankfully I managed to pick up another engine for $150, or Kyle did, and a little bit of work, not much, just drilling and tapping for the bigger studs and blanking off a few oil ports is all that's the only modifications required. So these will get it tidy up before it goes back together, and then we'll keep on leaning on it and see what fails next. But the turbo is still working really good. The intake air temperatures are sitting somewhere around 35 to 40 degrees depending on the ambient temperature, which is fine. We're still sitting really well on the efficiency curve of the turbo, so it's telling me that we can still turn it up more if the turbo compressor map runs out at about 28 psi at the airflow of this motor. So we've got more turbo left. It's really going to come down to whether we have more mechanical strength left. The power of the bike is now getting quite ridiculous for a kart track. It takes a lot of riding to manage the power on such a small track with a bike with very small tires. I've had a lot of moments spinning up the rear tire on corner exits and things. So but the project seems to be going well. The fuel injection and all the engine control system is working brilliantly. So see if we can get it to mechanically hold together again, and go from there.